Hello, and thank you very much to Paul Oakden for such a warm introduction. Before I start with my speech on education, I'd just like to say Paul just helped me to recap how we met in Peterborough. Let it be a warning to all of you. This is what happens when you turn up to volunteer. This could be you. Okay. So today I'm speaking to you about reclaiming our children's future. From preschool to postgrad, one thing is abundantly clear. Our education system, it's broken. It's been broken for decades. Instead of a massive, wide-sweeping, comprehensive reform to this failing system, we've endured the continual failings of tinkering policies and revolving curricula that have caused us to go from the leading education system in the world to what we have now. Inevitably, we repeat the failings of history time after time after time. But with each new failing comes a recycling of colour. Is it a red failure or is it a blue one? Take the latest promise that is first to be laid on the altar of convenience, post-pandemic. We were told they knew how important education was and that schools would never close again. Now we face the cost of living crisis, and what is the first suggestion they come up with? Of course, it is to close schools and cut teaching. The ultimate goal of our education system should be to prepare people for real life and help them to fulfill their potential, not about the profitability and the productivity of the institutions themselves. Teachers complain about workload and class sizes, students complain about boredom and being ignored, parents complain about the standards of education today compared to when they were children. Let's face it, nobody's happy with our education situation, except perhaps commercial providers of supply teachers. So at what point do we start holding consecutive Labour and Tory governments responsible for the decline in education and demand better? Not just for ourselves, but for our children and our children's children and generations to come. We've just come through the results season where we've seen even higher A to C grades than ever before. But we all know that education standards have been slipping compared to 20 years ago. How are these results possible? Are our children working harder? Are they being taught better? Or is it that the standards for grading such results have been lowered to accommodate the failings of the education system? Or particularly to cover up the car crash that was schooling during the pandemic? Once, our universities catered for the brightest and best in society, with grants available to help the disadvantaged achieve their full potential. Compare that to now, where students leave university with a whopping debt of more than £50,000. And it's worse than that. It rises to an average of £57,000 for the poorest, who are forced to borrow more for their education. Rather than levelling up, they are willfully increasing the disparity between the haves and the have-nots. Isn't it sad that our children need to mortgage their future just to get an education? The universities are no longer interested in your child or their success. They are purely interested in the business model of the university. Thank you. Now they are open to anyone who is willing to pay the fees. Proof of this is a young student related to a friend of mine. He's been granted a place in university despite only getting 3 U grades in their A-levels. Clearly, a fee-paying student is better for the university than an empty place, or even better, a foreign national student that can be charged way more than the fees of a UK national. This is the reality of an education system run by accountants and civil servants that have never worked a day as educators or have any concept of what it really takes to educate a child. We must refocus the system so that it concentrates on teaching, not earning. Education must never be about the institutions themselves. It must always be focused on the individual and their learning. It is a truism that not every child develops at the same speed or alacrity as their classmates. Not every child should be considered a candidate for higher education. Not every child wants to go to university. So why are these children being sacrificed to the gods of targets and statistics? Is it so outrageous to think that children in secondary education may simply want to be a carpenter, a plumber, an electrician, a mechanic? Is it really that outrageous for a child who shows talent, be it in dance, athletics, arts, or music, to focus their efforts on developing that talent instead of spending hours in subjects which will be of little use to them? From the earliest inception of learning, our education system needs to target the needs of our children and young adults, not generalising the educational needs of the masses. And conference. We can no longer afford not to. As a country embarking on a new chapter outside of the EU, we can no longer afford to be mediocre. We need to be the best, and we can be the best. What we need are more varied and focused routes for learning. Instead of funneling everyone down the same route, regardless of their aptitude, we need to support centres of excellence. Not just grammar schools, but centres of excellence in science, sport, dance, military, the arts. And we need more centres of learning that are geared towards vocational training, apprenticeships, trades, craftsmanship, that give those who are less academically inclined the sense of worth and well-being that they deserve. We are failing a generation, and we are selling them, literally in the case of universities, a terrible lie. There is something else that scares me more. It is the fact that we have a generation emerging where parents will have no say or control over what their children are taught. Sometimes even faced with criminal proceedings when they resist the overarching arm of the state. Given most ordinary people wouldn't trust this government or the Labour Party to run a bath, the idea we should trust them to decide what children are taught and how they are taught. Not facts, but fashionable theories that undermine family life and create division within the family unit. This is the clear and present danger that befalls us. The danger of state-initiated decisions on how and what a child must be taught, and when they must be taught it, through the proliferation of wokeism and ideologies that endanger the very fabric of our social and moral boundaries. What has begun in Wales and Scotland with the new relationship and sex education laws will soon be spread across the rest of the UK. What they are teaching our children in primary schools, I would be embarrassed to put in this speech. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. What we are seeing is a fundamental affront to a parent's God-given right to advocate for their children. This is a shift from parental responsibility to state-controlled indoctrination through education. This is not acceptable. It is pernicious, it is deliberate, and conference, make no mistake, we will be the party that resists it. As Aristotle said, and the Jesuits practiced, give me a child until he is 7, and I will show you the man. Now, instead of becoming Catholic, the powers that be want our children to be woke all their lives. This is because we know early childhood development takes place through a form of hypnotic imprinting on the mind of a child. What we are seeing repeated habitually in the media and throughout society is now being perpetuated through our schools, colleges, and universities that will eventually eradicate the gates of reason and confinement, and the toll will be the lives of generations to come. We need an education system that protects our children, protects the parents' rights to be a parent, and works to best serve our society for generations. The current education system is broken. It's been broken for decades. It is no longer fit for purpose. But it's not a lost cause. What we need, what our children and children's children need, is an education system designed to meet the needs of this ever-changing society in which we now live. What it needs now is reform. Thank you.